Capitol Report is a production of Senate Media Services.
Minnesota state government will remain divided as policymakers launch the 2021 session. We talk with U of M professor Dr. Kathryn Pearson about the latest election trends, plus a plan to slow the ever-growing theft of catalytic converters. Stay tuned for this week's Capitol Report. Welcome to this week's program. I'm Shannon Loehrke. Every election holds a few surprises, and 2020 was certainly no different. I spoke with University of Minnesota political science professor Dr. Kathryn Pearson about the state's results, and I began by asking her how Minnesota's election system fared during this unique pandemic year.
Our election system is holding up pretty well. Ballots are still being counted as of Thursday morning, pursuant to the laws in each state, and we've seen no systematic, widespread problems that have been reported. There's no evidence of tampering. But it is important, though, that the president has falsely suggested that he has won and accused Democrats of trying to steal the election when there's no evidence of that. So that is causing some voters to be concerned, particularly supporters of the president. And in fact, the U.S. government invited election observers from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe to the United States to observe our election. And in its report, they actually said that the president's attacks on the electoral process had harmed public trust in democratic institutions. And so we do have some concerns about public confidence, and hopefully there will not be violence once we know the results of the election on either side. But I think that, at this time, we need to be cautious about these things, given that there's no widespread problems in this election.
Last time we spoke, you thought there would be very little ticket splitting and more party line voting. That said, Biden won the state, and yet the Senate Republicans in the state maintained control, and the House Republicans picked up some seats. What does this tell you? Do Minnesotans prefer divided government?
That's a great question. And clearly there was some ticket splitting in Minnesota, but it is still the case that the vast majority of voters do vote straight party line. And in fact, at the national level, exit polls suggest that a record number of Democrats voted for Biden and a record number of Republicans voted for Trump. And it is likely that many of those same partisan voters voted straight party lines. However, Minnesota is pretty narrowly divided between the two parties. Democrats have a huge advantage in the metro area, and Republicans are spread sort of more consistently throughout the state and have advantages in greater Minnesota, particularly rural areas. And so in many legislative districts, Republicans are poised to do really quite well. And so, as the Democratic voters are, heavily concentrated into specific districts, and Republican voters are spread out a little bit more evenly throughout the rest of the state, Republicans do quite well at the state legislative level. So do some voters split their tickets? Sure, but the vast majority still vote party line. And I actually think a great example of this dynamic is Minnesota's 7th congressional district, where for years voters were willing to split their tickets. So 4 years ago, this year, Minnesota's 7th congressional district went for President Trump by around 30 points. But up until this year, Democratic congressional incumbent Kathryn Pearson hung on. So clearly a lot of voters in that district, Minnesota's 7th, were splitting their ticket. But in this election, that really came to an end. And the 7th district's vote for president and for Michelle Fischbach were pretty consistent, with Republicans having a huge edge in Minnesota's 7th district.
Now, one more just quick follow-up on the Minnesota legislature, because the House did pick up some seats and the Senate remains in Republican control. Is this in any way a referendum on Governor Walz, who was not on the ballot? Is there a frustration factor perhaps going on here?
Well, I think there is a frustration factor going on, particularly among Republicans, that's communicated by Republican leaders and Republican candidates. But the other dynamic going on, as elections get closer to the people, as candidates represent fewer numbers of people, sort of candidate characteristics, those things matter more. Voters are more likely to meet the candidates in person or hear from their campaigns directly in state legislative races. And so I think recruiting and candidate efforts really made a difference for both parties, but gave Republicans an edge in this cycle.
Well, and speaking a little bit more on the Republican edge, because I had a conversation with a lead GOP operative of the Minnesota Senate just this week, and he said this election will show whether door knocking really works. Republicans in Minnesota employed a robust door knocking effort and grassroots outreach. Because of COVID-19, the DFL did less. So did we learn anything about retail politics?
Yeah, and I think that's good insight, and it's complicated in a COVID era, right? Safety is obviously a concern, but political science research has long shown that person-to-person contact is more influential than a mailer or a phone call, and I think that the election results for Republicans really show that individual contact, again, where the races were close and with good candidates in swing districts, did have the potential to make a difference.
Now, you mentioned this just a little bit ago, because when you look at maps of election results nationally, but also in Minnesota, there's a clear divide between rural areas, which are generally Republican regions, and urban areas, which, tend to be more Democratic leaning. What do you make of this? Like, why is it such a distinct difference?
Well, this dynamic is not new in 2020. We saw it clearly in 2016, and we saw it in a lot of legislative races leading up to that. And it's also not unique to Minnesota. These dynamics are replicated all over the country. But it is the case that voters in rural America and rural Minnesota feel that Republicans better represent their interests. And in Minnesota specifically, the Democratic Farmer Labor Coalition really has become undone in recent elections cycles, both sort of in politics, in the legislature, and in the dynamics in the electorate, where rural voters in general feel that Republicans better meet their interests. But there's also sort of the strength of partisan attachment is also changing. Voters are more likely to feel identified with the Republican Party for cultural reasons who don't live in urban areas. And again, to bring back Minnesota's 7th district, congressional district, because it's just so interesting. Certainly it is the case that as the chair of the House Agriculture Committee, Democratic Congressman Kathryn Pearson was very engaged in agricultural issues, sugar beet issues in particular, sort of navigated the Farm Bill for many, many cycles. And yet sort of partisan identity was also a very important factor, and ultimately combined with a strong Republican candidate sort of caused his defeat. And so again, these dynamics are replicated all over the country, where both for sort of social reasons, but economic reasons, and because of partisan attachments, rural voters have really shifted to the Republican Party.
The polling was wrong in 2016, surprising nearly everyone when President Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton. This time, there were predictions of a blue wave, which did not materialize. What's going on?
That is a great question that no doubt pollsters are investigating and will be investigating for quite some time. Clearly, at the beginning of the night, Florida showed us right away that the polling was wrong. And it was particularly wrong in the Miami-Dade area, and it was particularly wrong in sort of accurately representing the preferences of Cuban Americans, Hispanic Americans in Florida. But it's also been sort of systematically wrong, to a lesser extent, but still wrong, across the country in underrepresenting support for President Trump. And that's what happened 4 years ago, and sort of pollsters assured us that they fixed it, that they realized that they didn't have enough whites without college degrees in their samples, and they fixed this to try to make them more representative. But at the end of the day, they weren't fixed. However, I do think once all of the votes are counted, because of the fact that Democrats were more likely to vote absentee and mail in their ballot, and in many states those votes couldn't be process until Election Day, I think the polls will be less off than we thought they were, but they were off. And it's a problem that the entire polling industry needs to address.
Now, we've only got just 30 seconds or so left, but the Grassroots Legalized Cannabis Party and the Legal Marijuana Now Party achieved anywhere from 6 to 12% of the vote in this election. With the divided electorate, what is the future role of these third-party candidates?
Well, with a narrowly divided electorate, they definitely have the potential to sort of affect the outcome of races, whether at the congressional level, the state legislative level, or even statewide in a future election. And obviously, they're bringing attention to the issues that they care about on the ballot. And then, as we are so polarized between the two parties, they also give independent voters sort of a place to go and express their frustration with the two major parties. In addition, or maybe instead of support for particular issues, legalizing marijuana.
Dr. Kathryn Pearson, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Senate Chief Photographer A.J. Olmscheid set out to capture Minnesota's strong tradition of voting. If your car runs on gasoline, a special device called a catalytic converter helps minimize the release of harmful exhaust chemicals into the air. These catalytic converters are made with precious metals, which are a hot commodity and of great interest to thieves. I spoke with Senator John Marty about his bill to cut back on the thefts, and I began by asking him whether thefts are on the rise.
Yes, they're very clearly on the rise. It's just a matter of the value of the metals. The catalytic converters, which the catalysts in them are precious metals that help break down the toxic pollutants. And so they require a piece of scrap metal might have $200 worth of scrap metal in it. And the value of those metals have gone up significantly in recent years. And therefore, it's a very profitable crime for people. So yes, they have gone up. I think in St. Paul, they have gone up like fivefold in the last 5 or 6 years, and they continue to grow as thieves find it's a quick way to get a couple $100.
You introduced a bill that would make it more challenging for thieves to sell catalytic converters. You introduced the bill in the last regular session. You also introduced it in the most recent special session. What do you have in mind?
Sure. There are several things we're trying to do. One of which is it's all focused on the fact that the people who are stealing these can do it quickly and they can sell them quickly. And some of the scrap metal dealers are in effect fencing operations. They're marketing them to these thieves saying, here, you can get it quickly and easily, quick way to get cash. And unfortunately, all it takes is one of those Sawzall types of electric saws. You just go slide under a car, a couple of quick cuts. It can take you less than a couple of minutes. And it's well hidden because you're under the car. They do it on street corners. They do it anywhere in the middle of the night, sometimes in the middle of the day. And so what we're trying to do is block them from happening. Several things in the bill, one of which is we require them to hold the converter for several days before they sell it, so if police or others can go there and check them out. Number two would be requiring them verifiable information on the fact that they're legitimately the owner of the catalytic converter. And the third thing we're trying to do is say scrap metal dealers can't buy them from anyone other than a bona fide business that deals with car repairs. In other words, if I come in off the street corner and say, hey, I got 10 catalytic converters for sale here, and they pay me a couple $1,000 for them, where did I get them? I mean, it's not like people just, oh, I just happen to have a collection of catalytic converters in my basement. No, they're stolen, and very obviously in most cases stolen. So we want to try and make it much more of a hassle.
Who are the victims of these crimes, and and how much does it cost for the repair? How much are these people out, and does car insurance help in any way?
Yes. Well, first of all, car insurance does help, because if you have a $1,000 deductible and it costs you $2,000 to get it replaced, well, it'll boost your auto insurance rates probably, but it also will save you $1,000 on it, because it's typical to be paying a couple $1,000 to get a repair on a catalytic converter. We had one county commissioner from up in Stearns County spoke at our town meeting that we had on this, a community meeting, to get people's ideas on this. He talked about a local nonprofit that had vans for driving people with disabilities. And he said they had a couple of them in their parking lot cut off, and they were like $3,000 each to repair. And so it's hitting nonprofits, it's hitting small businesses, and hitting family after family after family. I've talked to people who have one stolen, they get it replaced, and they get another one stolen. Most of us, fortunately, haven't had this experience, but it's a couple $1,000s out of pocket in most cases.
And it appears that these criminal activities are on the rise.
Yes, they're very clearly rising. As I said, in St. Paul, it's been growing significantly in the last 5 years. And that's not just St. Paul. I hear the same thing. We had this community meeting on catalytic converter thefts, trying to find out stories and things like that. We had a lot of callers from Minneapolis. We've heard from people in the suburbs, everywhere. It's a problem statewide.
According to a Forbes article last year, California requires all businesses to document sales of catalytic converters with a photo or video of the seller. They also they require that payment be made by check and to the business or the seller, and that there's a 3-day delay before that check can be picked up if it's not mailed to a specific address. How do you view this approach?
Yes, I think that's a good one. First of all, getting the photograph, requiring that scrap metal dealers, I believe, already have to do that. So yes, that's a good step. The other thing you just mentioned about California, where they can't pay them right away, they either have to wait 3 days or mail them a check or whatever else. Yeah, that's a good thing. And I think it's something we're looking at adding to the bill, because you don't want to have somebody who's just trying to get a couple $100 of quick cash or a couple $1,000 of quick cash to turn in a bunch of these, get the money and run. If they have to wait a few days to get the money, it's just one more barrier to their quick way of getting cash. And I think we ought to be exploring every kind of illustration like that. We had people who suggested, why not try and require the VIN number, the vehicle identification number. Every car in the country has a VIN number on it. Why don't we require them to stamp that on the catalytic converter? That'd be great. But again, that would take years for it to happen. And what about all the cars that have catalytic converters now? There are all kinds of approaches to do this, but we think the simplest and most obvious is to make it harder for the thieves to sell them. And one other thing we have in the bill I didn't mention earlier, we would prohibit an individual like you from just going in and selling a catalytic converter unless it's attached to a vehicle. In other words, the only people who could sell them to the scrap dealers are auto repair shops, muffler shops, things like that, that might have excuse to come across them. Somebody coming in just off the street saying, oh yeah, I just happen to have a bunch of them. I think we start with the presumption that those folks may have stolen property there.
Well, so I have 2 more questions. Regardless of the remedy to disincentivize the theft of catalytic converters, isn't this whole industry suspect in and of itself? I did an internet search. I found a local business that advertised accurate and competitive pricing. The business also spoke of maximizing profits. So as a regular course of business, who really is selling catalytic converters?
Largely thieves. Any auto dismantling operation, any scrap yard will have a lot of them too. Matter of fact, some of them you look for the price and how much you can get if they take your junker of a car. If they junk your car, how much will they pay you for it? And they ask you for the model number, the year, I mean, things like that. So they know how big the car is, what kind of metal they'll get from it, and so on, what valuable products they might get. And they do say, does it have all major components? And they list the 3 of them. They list transmission, they list engine, and they list catalytic converter. Catalytic converter is the one they list first because it's the most profitable part of the car. And so, yeah, those folks can have it. But if I'm a scrap metal dealer and I'm getting it from an auto recycling center, it's obvious they may have 30 a day if they junk that many cars. But you or I aren't going to have 10 catalytic converters unless we stole them. There's just no other reason people would do that. We put it in the bill as a total ban on an individual selling, but we'll take it out or modify it if we need to. We haven't heard anybody argue why that's a bad idea yet.
Now, one more question. Is it already illegal to buy stolen property? Could charges be brought against scrap metal dealers, especially if they're buying significant quantities from probably people who stole them?
Yes, I would love to see that happen. The trouble is it's hard to prove. It's hard to prove they were stolen and so on. We're not set up for that. And law enforcement and prosecutors have so many other crimes they're dealing with. This is purely an economic crime. I mean, it can lead to more dangerous things, and it's a huge economic crime. But yes, we can prosecute now if we have the evidence. We're trying to make it easier to, 1, get the evidence, and 2, put the buyers out of business. If they're crooked scrap metal yards, put them out of business. The honest ones can continue to thrive. The crooked ones, let's put them out of business.
Senator John Marty, I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
We end today's program with another in our series, The People's House. We're standing here outside the Capitol Rotunda next to the flagstaff from the 1st Minnesota Volunteer Infantry Regiment, which is one of the most important artifacts in Minnesota history from the Civil War. Can you talk about the significance of this flagstaff?
Sure. It's once again, it's a relic of the Civil War. Men from Minnesota were carrying this flag in months before that the Civil War battle took place at Gettysburg. But more importantly, it was kind of held front and center on the 2nd day when they made their famous charge down Cemetery Ridge, and on the 3rd day at Pickett's Charge.
As a transplant to the state of Minnesota, I was surprised to learn how important Minnesota's regiment was in the Battle of Gettysburg. Can you talk more about that?
Yes, the 2nd day of the battle, the Union line was about a mile in front of where the 1st Minnesota troops were located. And as the battle was progressing in front of them, the Union line started to crumble. Men were running through their ranks of the 1st Minnesota who were protecting a section of artillery pieces. And a general, understanding the consequence of men retreating in front of them, said, I need to plug that gap. And the 1st Minnesota was the closest group of soldiers available. So he had them fix bayonets, charge down to plug that gap in the Union line. And as they made that charge, about a 300-yard charge, they jogged the first couple hundred yards and then ran full tilt into the Confederate forces advancing. They could see they were overwhelmed, and that's exactly what happened to them. So on that 2nd day, within 15 minutes, they lost about 82% of their men. 8 of every 10 of them were killed or wounded.
On that 3rd day of the Battle of Gettysburg, so we're talking about July 3rd of 1863, that's where the staff came from. Can you tell the story of the staff?
As the Confederate forces were advancing up Cemetery Ridge, the color bearer, Corporal Dane, was holding the flag. He was shot through the hand that splintered the flagstaff, the Union flagstaff, in half. He dropped the flag because of his wounds, and Henry O'Brien, who was next to him, picked up that flag, and he, having only the bottom half was already shattered, he snapped that off and threw it aside, and then he started advancing toward the advancing Confederates. Well, for our soldiers, this flag was one of the most important things you're fighting for, because the worst thing that could ever happen to a regiment is to lose your colors. And so if you see that color moving forward, you have to protect that man in that color, and that's what these men from Minnesota did. They charged after their flag, ended up hitting the 20th Virginia Infantry, that was the opposing side, and for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, it was just a hand-to-hand slugfest, throwing, fists at each other, rocks, clubbing each other with their muskets, and so it was right in the heart of that big pickets charge that these first Minnesota men were right in the middle of that melee. And by the end of that, those men surrendered or retreated. The 20th Virginia lost their colors. So we were able to capture that color as well, the 20th Virginia flag, and that's still in the Minnesota Historical Society collections.
At the conclusion of the battle then, they had the Minnesota flag with only half of its staff, and they had the captured Virginia flag with the full staff. So who do you think decided to put these two things together, and what does it symbolize?
They did have the full length of the Virginia flag staff, and they took the bottom half of that and spliced it together with the northern flag staff, the 1st Minnesota regimental flag. And so they put nails, and then they took a knapsack strap and tightly wound that around the splice so you could have a little bit firmer hold. And so that flag staff with the tatters or the remnants of that 1st Minnesota national color were used until they pretty much were disbanded in 1864. So it wasn't like put in a chest and put in the wagon and carried along. They were still using that flag staff as they were marching or moving into campaigns and battles.
And do you think soldiers recognized the significance of having the staff from both the North and the South as part of their battle flag?
I think so. I think you're taking a part of the Southern story and you're taking the Northern story and putting that together. And for a lot of these men, that's why they joined to fight in the Army and to fight in the Civil War, was to preserve the Union. So symbolically what you're doing is you're taking that northern state and the southern state and joining them together with the whole idea that someday we'll have reunion again.
Why is the flag bearer so important in battle?
That was an important part of the communication on the battlefield. You have to remember, there's no radios, there's no communication except couriers, and a general sending a message to another colonel or another officer of a regiment in the battle by a horse and rider or a foot soldier, whatever it might be. And so they needed to know where to send that message to the colonel. And so the flags not only were that center for those officers, but for the soldiers fighting shoulder to shoulder. So if you're kind of in the middle of a battle and you're trying to figure out where the flag is, and you can see it in front of you, it's like, well, I need to advance because the colonel says, or the officers have told us to move forward. If it's no longer in sight and it's behind us, we have to retreat. So for that soldier, you're fighting for the flag, but you're also looking for that flag for your directions on the battlefield as well.
Join us again next week as we delve into more topics affecting Minnesotans. I'm Shannon Loehrke, and on behalf of all of us at Senate Media Services, thanks for watching.